What if the unthinkable happened? Terrorist attacks inside the American homeland by the Islamic State. From New York Times best-selling novelist Joel C. Rosenberg comes his most chilling political thriller yet, Without Warning. Without Warning is one of the must-read thrillers of 2017. One reviewer writes, "The jaw-dropping ending alone is worth the price of admission." Without Warning, available now from joelrosenberg.com.
Well, Joel Rosenberg joined us to tell us more about his new book called Without Warning, and you welcome him back to the 700 Club. Joel, good to see you.
Great to see you, Pat. Thank you.
I heard the king of Jordan learned about my interview with you about your last book.
Yeah, this is interesting. So last year, when you had me on for the book, The First Hostage, the previous in the series, the king was flying to Washington to meet with President Obama and members of Congress.
All right.
Well, an advisor of his was routing through London and picked up my novel at Heathrow Airport. Didn't know anything about me or the book. Read the novel on the way to Washington, and he was shocked to find the King Abdullah of Jordan is a named character in the series, right?
Okay. All right.
When he gets to Washington, he brings the book to His Majesty and he says, "You have to read this."
All right.
And the king says, "Why?" "Because you're in it." He goes, "What do you mean I'm in it? It's a novel, right?"
Yeah.
He said, "I know, but you're a character in the book." He goes, "What?" Now, at that same moment, the president was canceling his meeting with King Abdullah. He was too busy. Too busy. You and I, the next day, were together, and I said to you on the show, "Listen, this is ridiculous. The president doesn't have time for our most faithful Sunni Arab ally in the middle of a hot war against the Islamic State. This is a man we should be strengthening, encouraging." And I sort of went off during the interview, and you let me very graciously, and because it was wrong. Well, what happened is, because the president had canceled the meeting, the king had some time. So in less than 2 days, he read the novel. Then I posted a transcript of our interview on my blog. Okay. The advisor, wanting to know a little bit more about who I was, went to my website and then read the blog. Then printed out the transcript of our interview and gave it to His Majesty. And at which point, rather than me being banned from Jordan forever, because obviously this is a series in part about ISIS attacking Israel, Jordan, and the United States, rather than banning me, he invited my wife and me to come for 5 days and visit with him and his top generals to learn how they're trying to protect the kingdom from the Islamic State. All set into motion in part by yours and my interview.
I'm glad I could have some part in it. Well, listen, this one, Joel, is something. It looks like you were talking about President Obama as you started the book, but you've got this feckless leader of the nation who is a snow job artist for the American people, but he's covering up, and your protagonist, I wish you'd made him something besides the New York Times. Couldn't you have gotten
New York Times reporter? Well, look, there are reputable people in the media. They're not all.
The great lady looks so beautiful.
Well, look, first of all, it's my fictional president is not President Obama, but a president who thinks that he is making progress against the Islamic State, but doesn't understand the magnitude of the threat and doesn't understand what's driving the Islamic State. The leaders of the Islamic State aren't simply radical Islamic terrorists. They are what I call apocalyptic Islamic terrorists. I mean, they are trying to bring about the end of the world as we know it. And they believe that if they commit genocide, which is really what ISIS is engaged in against Christians, Sunni or Shia Muslims, and Yazidis, if they commit genocide, that will somehow hasten, in their view, the coming of their so-called Messiah, the Mahdi, and the establishment of the global Islamic kingdom, with, they believe, Jesus as the deputy to the Mahdi to help annihilate all of us infidels. This is, in real life, an extraordinarily dangerous thing. And the question now that President Trump and his team have to face is, how do they do a better job? I think they can. I think they must. And that's the challenge right now.
Well, they've started an action against Rocco, which is this other guy that you, in your book, didn't want to do. But the interesting thing about your book, it's conventional stuff. I mean, you've got World War II howitzers, and you've got old-fashioned armaments that come out of Alabama. I mean, it's an interesting, but sarin gas, they're using...
well, that's one of the challenges is the danger, of course, is ISIS not just trying to do genocide in Iraq and Syria. The question without warning is, could they find a way to penetrate inside the United States and then using maybe some unconventional tactics, then use unconventional weapons like chemical weapons and attack not only Washington, but multiple cities throughout the United States? Now, you graciously referred to me as being prophetic. I pray that this never comes true, but I think this is what the president is warning us right now, that if we are not careful about who we let into the country and how we protect our borders and how we go on the offense against the Islamic State, we run the risk of being blindsided, being hit without warning by the Islamic State.
Do you have any hard intelligence about how many sleeper cells ISIS has got in this country? Do you know?
Well, I just met on Friday with the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. This is Congressman Michael McCall of Texas.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's hard intelligence on the number of sleeper cells, but just in the last few years, just last year, 36 people were arrested in the United States on ISIS-related plots. 36 last year. So been 117 plots intercepted and disrupted over the last several years. So you can see the magnitude of the ISIS effort, both to send people here, but also to radicalize people that are already here. This is the threat. And I'm glad to see the president taking measures to improve border security, extreme vetting. Look, we don't want a ban on Muslims. That's not what is being talked about. We want to strengthen our alliances with Jordan, with Egypt. I think President El-Sisi, he has his issues on human rights, the economy, but he's attacking the radicals. We need to strengthen him.
Obama was a buddy of the Muslim Brotherhood instead of El-Sisi. El-Sisi wants to be our friend.
He does, and I think that evangelicals should reach out to El-Sisi, get to know him, spend some time with him. El-Sisi is meeting with Jewish leaders. He met with Pope Francis in Rome. He's meeting with Coptic Christian leaders in Egypt, and he is fighting the radicals. And what's more, he's not only literally fighting them in Egypt, in the Sinai, for example, but he also went to Al-Azhar University in Cairo. This is the Harvard of Sunni Islam. And he told these leaders, the Islamic clerics, you need to reform, you need a revolution in Islam because you're going to face the day of judgment if you continue to encourage this violent, militant Islamism, this sense that you can use Islam to create a totalitarian system. You are going to face judgment. Now, what Muslim leader has ever said these type of things? El-Sisi has, King Abdullah of Jordan has. These are the type of men that we need to work with, as well as working with the Israelis.
The terrible thing with the Obama administration is they have turned their back on El-Sisi. They didn't want to help him, and they opened up to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a radical group. They haven't really helped Jordan to speak of, but as you mentioned, that they stiffed the king when he came to see the president.
Astonishing.
I mean, the whole thing is just unbelievable.
And I think, therefore, President Trump has done an amazing job. The national security team is solid. These are strong, experienced people. General Mattis, Mike Pompeo is a friend over at CIA. Dan Coates coming in as Director of National Intelligence.
Good guy.
These are strong, excellent people, and they're experienced. What's more, he's asked the Pentagon to put together a war strategy.
Well, they've already started sending troops against Raqqa. I mean, they're going after.
Well, and that's something that we didn't think President Trump would do, was to go into Syria. So that's a new development.
Yeah.
I am. We'll see how that plays out. I think the first step is you liberate Iraq. We've already made a commitment as Americans that that's an important country, and we put a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and treasure into Iraq. I think we're getting close now to liberating all of Iraq. We're going to need a new status of forces agreement in Iraq. What President Obama, got rid of all of our forces. No, we need U.S. forces on the ground there long term. I don't mean in fighting all the time, but making sure it doesn't become a vacuum, making sure Iran doesn't come and take over Iraq. I'm encouraged to see the president has invited leaders from 68 countries at the end of March to a Washington summit to talk about how to defeat ISIS. But there's one other thing that's important.
Yeah.
This president is the first president in history to use the term radical Islamic terrorism.
That's right.
President Bush didn't use it. President Obama famously didn't use it. But once you use the term, you have both the opportunity and the responsibility to define it. We need to make clear that we're not talking about the vast majority of the Muslim people.
Yeah.
I think the studies that we've looked at show that 90% of Muslims are not violent, but you have 7 to 10% who do support terrorism.
10% of 1.3 billion is a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. It would be about half the population of the United States.
Yeah.
So it's important for the president to say we're not talking about 90+% of the country of the Muslim world, but we are saying that this is a serious problem and start to define. We don't mean that all Islam is radical. We mean that those who want to use Islam for terrorism, those are our threats, and it's a serious threat.
As Al-Sisi says, the rest of them don't condemn. They don't dare to condemn the radicals. They're silent. They're not out condemning radical Islam. They aren't.
Well, I agree that the Muslim world has been very reticent to define this problem.
Yes.
But I was just at the lunch where King Abdullah of Jordan spoke in Washington at the National Prayer Breakfast. There was a leadership luncheon. And he said, we have been too silent. We need to speak out. He said, this is an internal problem. This is a Muslim civil war. He describes these as kawaj. This is a term that means outlaws or criminals within Islam. Now, you can have a whole theological argument. Is this real Islam? Is it not Islam? But if Muslim leaders say, we want to fight it, we need to encourage those men, those leaders, that made their tribe increase, who speak out and fight against these threats.
The amazing thing here in this country, there were 1,000 pages in the FBI counterterrorism book that was scrubbed because they took every reference to Islam out. I mean, the Obama people didn't want to mention Islam, radical Islam, or anything about Islam. They took it all out.
And the mistake there is Muslim leaders like Al-Sisi and like King Abdullah, they're saying, listen, it's not all Islam, but these are our criminals. These are our outlaws. So this is why this novel is a way of helping people, first of all, stay up all night reading. I want to entertain. I want to, and there's a spiritual journey in this story also. But at the same time, it sort of shows the picture of when you have leaders who won't take the threat seriously or think that they are, but they're not being decisive. The danger is this threat comes inside the homeland, and then the next part of the book, as you know, I won't give it away, but the hunt for to take out the leaders of ISIS. It's working with our Arab and Israeli allies. That's something we need to do while we protect ourselves from this book ever happening. And I did say I was with the vice president a few weeks ago, I said, okay, it's all on your guys' shoulders now. You know, I write these fictional books, but you guys need to really get the job done.
Well, the book is called Without Warning. You know, Joel, I said at the beginning, I was in Korea with the Marines, and
thank you for your service.
I served under MacArthur, actually, when I was in Japan for a while. He was still in charge of things. If we'd listened to him, we wouldn't have this problem today, but it's surfaced on the Korean Peninsula, and it's very dangerous. They've got extraordinary nuclear capabilities. They've got missile, they're launching, and they're aiming at the United States. Yeah. We wouldn't have had that if we'd done the job. So you've got to clean house on these people. You can't leave them there.
I was just in South Korea about a year and a half ago. It was my first time. They took me up to the DMZ. We went into those tunnels. We had a chance to look at the forces. It's a very dangerous situation, and it's combined. You look at North Korea's relationship to Iran, for example. They are working on ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons together. Now, when you look at Iran and ISIS and North Korea with this type of technology and a genocidal outlook,
that's right.
This is nothing like we've ever seen in human history. And thank God we have an administration that will call it out for what it is and will focus on it. And I'm encouraged, like I said, General Mattis and these teams. This is a new team, and they're far better than we had
I tell you,
the last 8 years.
Of the left had better be quiet, because we're facing a threat that's existential, and it's there and it's real. But anyhow, this book is without warning about ISIS and the
It is fiction, but we hope it stays fiction, right?
It's got a lot of truth in it about the sleeper cells in this country, and they definitely have them, but any question about it. Joel is a very popular author. This book is available wherever books are sold. And Joel, thank you. And I don't know if any king is going to be watching this show, but maybe one of them is.
Maybe he'll see you.
Okay,
Good to see you, Pat. Bless you.
Thank you, buddy. God bless you.